warp raged like an endless storm, a churning void where reality itself seemed to tear apart. Shadows of twisted shapes drifted across the fractured skies, and the air carried whispers of 1,000 battles fought and lost. From different corners of the multiverse, two beings were drawn through the rift, their forms stark against the chaos. One stood silent, hair and eyes calm, a seemingly unshakable figure of infinite strength. The other's eyes burned with unrelenting fury, every movement exuding the raw power of a lifetime spent in war. Both had known combat, had faced impossible odds, but here, in this alien expanse, nothing familiar remained. The warp did not obey logic or strength. It consumed, twisted, and challenged every expectation. Saitama's first steps were measured, each footfall creating small ripples in the unstable ground beneath him. The air crackled with unseen energy, and he could feel the strange tug of the warp, as if the universe itself were testing him. Around him, warped structures rose like jagged teeth, remnants of civilizations that had fallen long before any record of time. Kratos, in contrast, moved with aggression, striking the air, testing its resistance. Every strike left a trail of energy, illuminating the darkness and revealing glimpses of monstrous forms lurking just beyond vision. The two warriors regarded each other cautiously, neither fully understanding the other's purpose, yet instinctively sensing the magnitude of the threat surrounding them. The warp began to react. Tendrils of raw energy twisted and writhed, reaching toward the intruders as if alive, probing for weaknesses. Saitama's calm resolve clashed against the chaotic pull, his body radiating a faint aura of unflinching presence. Kratos' fury, however, acted like a hammer against the storm, sending shockwaves that momentarily tore through the warp's grasp. The first encounters were brief but intense. Lesser warp-spawned creatures erupted from the ground, distorted forms with jagged edges and impossible anatomies. Saitama's punches ended them almost instantly, the simplicity of his movements belying their lethality. Kratos tore through them with brutal efficiency, his battle cries echoing across the broken landscape. Both understood quickly that survival demanded more than raw strength. It demanded adaptation, cunning, and an understanding of this universe's rules. Silence followed the skirmish, a brief pause as the two warriors assessed the storm around them. "This place, it doesn't follow any logic I've known," Saitama said quietly, voice calm yet carrying weight. Kratos' grip tightened around his weapon, eyes scanning the horizon. "Logic is irrelevant here," he replied, voice deep and resonant. "Only power and will endure." The two of them, so different in temperament, realized that the warp itself was not just an obstacle, it was an opponent, a test of the very essence of strength and resolve. The storm pulsed as if acknowledging their presence, the chaotic energy bending, stretching, and morphing in response to their potential. Movement ahead drew their attention. A colossal figure, more a shadow of intention than flesh, emerged from the swirling chaos. Its presence alone seemed to distort reality, the very fabric of the warp twisting around it. Both Saitama and Kratos felt the weight of its gaze, an awareness that seemed to pierce through every layer of their being. This was not a simple foe, not a creature of muscle or weapon. It was a force, a reflection of the universe's most extreme contradictions. Their initial instinct was to attack, but instinct alone would not suffice. They circled, each aware of the other's capability, each understanding that misjudgment could result in absolute obliteration. The silence before the clash stretched into eternity, the air itself thick with tension. When the battle began, it was unlike any fight either had faced before. The figure moved not with limbs, but with the manipulation of reality itself, sending distortions and rifts that tested the limits of perception. Kratos' strikes shattered the warp space, each swing of his weapon carving paths through the maelstrom. Saitama's movements, conversely, were precise, almost effortless, each punch not only hitting, but neutralizing the chaotic influence around him. Their styles, so opposed, began to complement one another. Rage and calm, brute force and unyielding precision. The warp responded violently, surging around them, yet neither being faltered. Observers from any reality would have witnessed two singularities of power dancing within a storm that could unmake worlds. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, the clash between warriors and cosmic force intensifying. Every step, every strike reshaped the ground, caused energy to flare, and altered the dimensional threads of the warp itself. Both Saitama and Kratos began to sense patterns in the chaos, glimpses of order hidden within the violent storm. The realization dawned slowly. To endure this realm, to survive and influence it, they could not simply rely on their inherent strength. Strategy, awareness, and perhaps an alignment of intent would be required. It was a lesson both had never been forced to consider. In their own worlds, raw power often sufficed, but here, understanding the rules of existence was just as critical. Suddenly, they came face to face, not in combat with each other, but in the presence of the warp's true heart, a maelstrom of energy spiraling infinitely, almost sentient. The being they had perceived as a foe now appeared more as a mirror, reflecting not only their power, but their intentions, desires, and limitations. Kratos' fury bristled against it, seeking to destroy, to dominate. Saitama's calm eyes, however, observed, measuring, contemplating. The warp pulsed, almost breathing, feeding off their inner states. In this suspended moment, the truth became undeniable. To escape or to reshape this reality, they would need to act in unison, combining strength and insight in a way that neither had previously imagined. An unspoken agreement formed between them. Attack and aggression alone would achieve nothing. Instead, they synchronized, Saitama focusing precision on destabilizing the warp's chaotic knots, Kratos channeling his fury to break its overwhelming force into fragments. The battle transformed into an elegant, terrifying dance, each movement measured yet devastating, each strike a calculated act against the storm's impossible energy. The surrounding warp shuddered under the display, folding and twisting as if yielding, momentarily, to their combined will. The universe itself seemed to pause, acknowledging the convergence of two unparalleled forces within its most hostile expanse. Finally, as the storm reached its crescendo, the warp recoiled, spiraling into a state of temporary stasis. Both warriors stood, battered but resolute, the echoes of their combined might lingering in the fractured sky. Saitama's calm gaze met Kratos' fierce eyes, and a mutual respect was silently acknowledged. Strength alone was meaningless here. Only the synthesis of force and understanding could carve a path forward. The warp had tested them, and in surviving, they had rewritten the rules of their presence in this reality. Yet ambiguity remained. The storm had not vanished entirely. It waited, patient and eternal, a reminder that in a universe defined by chaos, mastery was never final, and the true test of power was eternal vigilance. The landscape around them began to work differently, fragments of collapsed worlds floating like shards in a fractured mosaic. Shadows of entities they could not name loomed in the distance, observing silently. Kratos stepped forward, testing the limits of the space, his weapon leaving trails that shimmered like molten steel. Saitama followed, unassuming yet impossibly powerful, his calmness a counterpoint to the storm of rage beside him. The warp, sensing their union, shifted unpredictably. Time itself seemed to bend, seconds stretching into eternities, forcing both warriors to recalibrate, to anticipate threats not yet manifested. In this crucible, power was not defined by strength alone, but by the ability to act with clarity amidst chaos. Suddenly, the first true challenge emerged, a massive entity, neither fully corporeal nor entirely energy, surged from the depths of the warp. Its presence created tremors that threatened to tear the reality around them. Kratos reacted instinctively, his weapon slicing through its tendrils with explosive force, each strike reshaping the battlefield. Saitama's movements were subtler, precise taps that disrupted the entity's internal balance, unraveling the chaotic flow that sustained it. They fought as one, yet not with unity born of friendship, but with mutual understanding of necessity. The warp's creature responded violently, fracturing the ground beneath them, forcing them to adapt in real time, testing their limits beyond anything either had encountered before. Amidst the battle, Kratos' fury reached its zenith. His strikes grew more aggressive, almost reckless, shaking the air with kinetic shockwaves. Saitama, however, remained composed, observing, adjusting, allowing the storm to reveal its patterns before committing force. Slowly, a rhythm emerged, a synchrony between chaos and control. Each strike from Kratos amplified the effect of Saitama's precision. Each calculated punch neutralized wild fluctuations in the warp. The entity itself seemed to hesitate, a cosmic intelligence recognizing the unprecedented display of dual force mastery. Neither warrior spoke. No words could define the magnitude of this confrontation. Only the echoes of their combined power could narrate the story. As they pushed deeper into the heart of the warp, reality itself began to fracture more visibly. Floating debris of destroyed civilizations spun lazily, shards of metal and bone drifting without resistance. The air vibrated with raw energy, and the sky, a kaleidoscope of violent hues, reflected the inner turmoil of the storm. Kratos growled, moving with controlled violence, each swing of his weapon destabilizing the surrounding space. Saitama, by contrast, moved almost meditatively, observing the subtle reactions of the warp to each intervention. Together, they became not just participants, but agents of influence, shaping the chaos around them with deliberate intent, forcing the warp to bend temporarily to the logic of their combined presence. It was then that the first philosophical revelation struck them. Power alone, no matter how infinite or furious, was insufficient. The warp did not yield to force. It responded to comprehension. Saitama's calm reflection, Kratos' relentless drive, each complemented the other in a way neither had experienced before. For the first time, both recognized a universal truth within the chaos. Strength must be guided by insight. Fury must be tempered by awareness. The warp itself seemed to sense this synthesis, its tendrils retreating and reforming, testing the boundaries of their understanding, challenging them to apply more than raw combat, demanding strategy, thought, and balance amidst devastation. Emerging from the maelstrom, they encountered remnants of civilizations that had been annihilated centuries prior, ghostly echoes of life lingering in distorted echoes. Kratos' eyes narrowed at each vision, recognizing the futility of pure destruction. Saitama's calm presence offered contrast, revealing the subtle order hidden in the chaos. Together they navigated the debris, encountering strange creatures, warped by the environment, yet instinctively attuned to the anomalies in the warp. Each engagement, each strike, was a test not only of strength, but of insight. The battlefield itself became a tutor, and the two warriors, previously masters of their own domains, were now students of an incomprehensible, infinite curriculum. Tensions escalated as a new adversary emerged, a colossal being, partially armored, partially energy, radiating malice and intelligence. It regarded the intruders as anomalies, imperfections within the warp that demanded correction. Kratos charged with fury unrestrained, his weapon striking arcs that left the air glowing, forcing the being to react defensively. Saitama moved methodically, each strike precise, targeting vulnerabilities invisible to the eye. The clash was monumental, energy colliding with energy, fury meeting calm, each moment punctuated by tremors that threatened to unmake the already fragile landscape. The warp shuddered, as if acknowledging that these two were beyond minutes, hours, perhaps lifetimes passed. Time held no meaning here. Every strike, every movement, every calculated pause reshaped reality in subtle ways. Saitama and Kratos began to perceive patterns in the chaos, glimpses of order within the maelstrom, revealing that the warp was not merely hostile, it was testing, observing, adapting. They realized that survival and influence required synchronization. Neither could dominate alone. Saitama's insight neutralized the unpredictable. Kratos' power shattered the insurmountable. Together, they became catalysts of change within the warp, not conquerors, not saviors, but agents of transformation, bending the rules of the universe subtly yet irrevocably. Finally, they approached the core of the warp, a spiraling maelstrom of raw energy, a force that seemed alive, observing, and infinitely patient. The environment responded instantly to their presence. Ripples of tension, distortions of light and shadow, bending of space itself. Kratos' voice carried across the void, not as words, but as intent, challenging the maelstrom, striking with calculated rage. Saitama's calm energy complemented it, threading precision through chaos, targeting weak points invisible to mere perception. For a moment, the universe itself seemed to pause, witnessing two incomparable forces harmonize within an impossible storm, pushing the boundaries of what the warp would allow. The climax unfolded not as a battle of brute force, but as a convergence of understanding. Kratos' rage and Saitama's composed power intertwined, striking the core of the warp simultaneously, not to destroy, but to reshape. The maelstrom responded violently, light and shadow folding and unfolding, energy twisting in impossible geometries. When the turbulence settled, the warp was altered, temporarily stable, yet retaining its infinite complexity. Both warriors stood, silent, absorbing the consequences. They had survived, yes, but more importantly, they had influenced the essence of a universe that defied comprehension. A subtle acknowledgement passed between them. Strength alone was meaningless without insight, fury alone without control, and even infinite power must be guided by wisdom. As they withdrew, the remnants of the shattered warp followed them with reverent stillness, no longer entirely hostile, but not entirely benign. Kratos' fury ebbed, replaced with measured contemplation. Saitama's calm gaze scanned the horizon, noting the subtle shifts, the echoes of change left behind by their intervention. They had altered not only the battlefield, but the principles governing the warp itself, leaving a legacy of balance forged from extremes. The storm behind them rumbled, alive yet subdued, a testament to the remarkable convergence of rage and infinity, chaos and order, fury and calm, two forces that had forever left their mark on a universe defined by uncertainty. In the final scene, the horizon stretched infinitely, fractured yet strangely coherent, a visual echo of the duality that had been enacted. Kratos and Saitama, standing at the edge of comprehension, understood that the warp would always challenge them, would always demand more. Yet they had proven a principle immutable, that even in the most incomprehensible chaos, harmony could be found between extremes. Their paths diverged, yet the bond forged in the crucible of the warp lingered, subtle and permanent. The storm waited patiently, eternal and unyielding, a cosmic reminder that mastery was never final, and that the true measure of strength lay not in destruction, but in understanding, adaptation, and the courage to act with both precision and force in a universe without rules.